Welcome, everyone, to this panel on NFTs with superpowers. We have exciting guests here today to talk all about kind of the unique products and experiences that NFTs can enable. The brief intro on this is that we're used to think about NFTs as simply art and collectibles, but we know the utility goes far beyond this. And in kind of our protocol at Boson, we're using NFTs for a bunch of things. For instance, these tokenized transactions, these NFT vouchers that can be redeemed for real world physical goods, and other exciting features. So we really believe that NFTs can merge the experience of buying something in the metaverse and receiving it in the real world and provide kind of this coherent platform for these unique branded experiences and products. We've seen NFTs flourish in the last kind of 2 years, and a lot of use cases that have emerged far beyond just representing art or being collectibles. Really excited about the different panelists we have today that merge the worlds of more traditional retail and more out there NFT projects. So I'm just going to introduce them to you by order. We have Joe Pace with us, who's the head of business development at ASICS. Welcome, Joe. I know you've been at some other panels with us in the past.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Looking forward to this.
We have Chris Twining, who's the global digital account director at Denso International. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to this one.
And then we have Nicole, who's founder and CEO of Asian. She's also referred to as Asian Mom. Hey, Nicole.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Can't wait to share and talk to you guys about Fashion Week and NFTs. So yeah.
Awesome. We also we're expecting Betty from Deadfellas, who sadly can't be with us today. She's sick, but maybe we will have somebody from Deadfellas joining us along the way. Let's see, just a brief intro to me. I'm Jonas, Web3 director at Boson. So getting into it, all about NFTs with superpowers. The first question goes to you, Joe. So you've been familiar with Boson for some time, have joined us for really interesting discussions on NFTs in the past. Without giving too much away, can you tell us a bit more about the ASIC strategy in regards to NFTs, and especially how they can create new unique experiences, and in this context of why gamification is so important here?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question, and it's tricky because we're a global company. We have this broader mission of sound mind, sound body, right? So ASICS, a lot of people don't realize, is a Latin acronym that means sound mind, sound body. And so everything that we're trying to do with NFTs, with our physical products that people more traditionally know us for, really ladders up to that broader goal. And so for us, everything that we're doing has to connect back to that somehow. As much as it might be fun to just put out cool looking NFTs that have nothing to do with physical activity, for us it's like that makes no sense. We can't do that, and we shouldn't do that, right? It would be disingenuous to our brand mission, and wouldn't be the value we're trying to offer the world. And so for us, when we think about this gamification layer and what NFTs can do beyond just be cool pieces of digital art or digital assets, for us, it's about creating new habits, creating positive habits in the world, and using gamification to excite people in new and different ways. And so, again, you mentioned not giving too much away. I won't give won't give anything away here, but soon we will. And I think the what's really exciting for us is starting to use this time of metaverse and NFTs as this sort of like authoring period for what the metaverse means and what it can be, because it really, I think when you talk about it with people don't necessarily have a clear grasp of what the metaverse means, and oftentimes what the value of NFTs are. I think people think it's a big, pyramid scheme oftentimes, but when you actually get into it a bit, you start to realize that, well, it definitely can be a pyramid scheme, and it's been done before, and people have taken advantage of people in the space. But at the same time, you can use these things for whatever creative purpose you want. And so I think a lot of it comes down to intention. And for me, and for everything that we're doing with gamification, it's all about finding new ways to motivate people to exercise in the physical world, connect them back to our physical products, but also be creating habits that make them feel healthier as people in the world. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I really resonate with the point of NFTs as kind of this really open standard for representing value. And it essentially has like endless ways it can be applied. Thinking about ASICs, right, and how you guys use this more of a tool to drive your vision forward. I think we have some similarities here with Chris. And Chris, you're obviously thinking deeply about the future of retail. And as we spend more time in the metaverse, what the strategies are that we will see. And a specific question to you, what do you think we will see brands adopting to provide these unique experiences and value to customers?
Yeah, great question. I mean, obviously we know with the pandemic, it kind of disrupted retail entirely. There was already kind of this migration away from the high street, going into those e-commerce spaces and whatnot. But obviously that sped it up very much so. And as we enter into what we now obviously everyone refers to as the new normal / now just the normal, it's really trying to imagine like a high street and what the purpose or utility of that space is, right? What does bricks and mortar represent for brands? And I think with the introduction of Web3 and the metaverse, for me, it's very much kind of how you can tie your physical like bricks and mortar strategy to that virtual space. And I know, because this is how Boson came onto my radar, is trying to really understand that, whether we go from physical to digital or digital to physical. So I think as it was mentioned around like NFTs and kind of the purchase of digital assets, what utility does that have beyond just being a PFP or a virtual item? How can we go into those stores and create immersive experiences where you can redeem, where you can forward, where you can burn that NFT to unlock additional benefits, right? It's not just about going to like place an order, because obviously that would be quite a simplistic user case. But for me, it's about utilizing this technology to kind of, again, reinvigorate that physical space and create purpose in what you're doing in store. You're seeing brands like Nike in their store, for example, in New York City, where being very much still in kind of Web2 space around AR and their Roblox experience. So like as you do an action in store, you redeem something that you can then take into that experience. But if we utilize that power of Web3 and that NFT and the NFT mechanics we're discussing here, there's so much more possibility there, right? There's so much possibility around access to exclusive products, but exclusive experiences tied back to that virtual experience as well. So I think that's something that we're spending a lot of time with our brands over at Dentsu discussing, is really trying to figure out what brands can do this in the most organic way, where it doesn't feel like it's jumping on the bandwagon, because we're obviously seeing a lot of that with brands at the moment. There's not much purpose in some of these experiences, but there's definitely brands that we work with and beyond that can play in this space and can create those kind of interoperable experiences between physical and digital.
That's really, really interesting. I think, especially on like jumping on the bandwagon, we are really focused, for instance, at Boson at finding something that feels natural, right? And I think this is what we're seeing a bit with Metaverse Fashion Week here, that we have this core community that is super excited about this use case. And it's rather that than trying to essentially just throw something out and kind of see who's going to be interested. So now we have Nicole, who's coming from a slightly different perspective as a Web3 native project that is coming into the space and dipping your toes into physicals with Metaverse Fashion Week. Could you tell us a bit more about how you use NFTs and their programmable qualities as a tool for building community? I see the Asian community is really engaged in the Twitter spaces I've been in, for the last few days, also on Twitter. So if you could tell us a bit more about this and how NFTs shape what you do. You're on mute, Nicole.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, for sure. I would love to talk more about it. I would say, like, especially whenever I try to explain it to, people from Web2, they'll be like, how did you even get so many people? It's like, how do you get them, to even jump on Discord and and build this community? And I would say that how other and how I have done it, it's true, like, it's true zero. Basically, you need to start to put yourself out there, and then, basically having a project, it's not as easy as just putting it out there and then just waiting for people to discover it. I mean, if you are that lucky, like, I feel that a lot of the projects that is successful, they'll need to build it from scratch. And basically how I even started this project is that when I was in the space last year, because I was quite early in Bitcoin, and I started, I discovered Bitcoin in 2013, and it has been a long journey. So last year I discovered NFTs, and back then I felt like there wasn't any projects that sort of like resonates with me as an Asian woman. Back then we had a lot of like pixelated things and really cute things. I mean, no offense to that, I'm a huge fan. I collect so many NFTs. But then back then, when I was jumping on the Discord and kind of like going into a lot of communities, I felt that, I was kind of like not included in a way. Like, for instance, let's say I have my Discord name as Nicole, and when I jump on Discord, and they'll be like, oh, are you a girl, right? And I'll be like, yes, I'm a girl. And then they'll be like, oh, this is not a girl's play. Look at the NFTs, they're all guys, and stuff like that. So, I have been through like so many experience back then where I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna start my own community that that I would like, that would be inclusive of towards people like me. So that is how Asian came about. And when I first started, I obviously don't know where to start, because there is no right way for you to market, or you can like you can pay and buy ads to put your NFTs out there, but that is not how it works. I mean, you could get like 60,000, 70,000 exposure and no and nobody like interested in your project. So what I did was I actually jumped onto like Twitter Spaces. I was there like every single day. I went up to like 6 to 8 hours a day, just over there talking to people, connecting with people. And that is how I grew. I grew from literally zero. And right now, in my Discord, I'm so blessed. Like, I always tell people that I have the best community. I may be biased, I am, but I don't know all these people in Discord, but they are like family. And then me having my name as Asian mom, I always be like, hey kids, good morning, and then they'll be like, good morning, mom. So it's a kind of relationship that we have formed. It's a really special, unique one, right? So I would say like NFTs has really helped and shaped the way of how we kind of build our communities. And it's at a personal level, honestly, although we have never met that person before. And most of I'm in Malaysia, so most of our users are actually based in the West. I've never seen them. I've never, traveled to the States, but, it just feels like we are so close to each other, right? So I guess one good thing that I like about this project is that I feel that everybody, no matter where you are, no matter of your gender, your job, your age, everyone is here for the same reasons. They are all having we are all having the same vision and stuff like that, where they want to see Asian to be a global brand and to represent Asian cultures, and they want to learn more about it. So I would say like this Boson event has really excited me, because I feel that, right after we have sold out, and right now we are kind of like building the community, and then everybody is like, oh, is there any utility? Are you guys going to do real life events? Or is there merch and stuff like that? And I was really happy when through Boson, I was able to connect with Shop Cider. They're actually our neighbors. I think they're here. And we managed to do a partnership, and all of our members, if they jump onto Shop Cider, they can actually get 15% off. So that is utility, and everybody's so happy, right? And like I'm actually a huge fan of Shop Cider. I shop there quite a lot, so that is utility. So yeah, I guess NFTs really do help kind of shape the way how we form our communities, and I foresee that things will actually kind of inspire more people, especially like brands, companies, to actually build their customers and their communities that way too, through NFTs.
That's really interesting, and we're super happy to hear that in this space of Metaverse Fashion Week, we're able to connect like projects like yours with like more traditional retailers like Cider. It's really fun to see these exciting collaborations kind of pop off, and specifically with the discount you have there, and overall with the community you've built. We are at Boson really excited of this feature of token gated purchases, and what we also like to call conditional commit. So this notion of only the holder of a certain NFT can buy a certain product, like giving kind of special benefits to certain communities in this sense. And I'm just curious, Joe, being able to kind of build these unique experiences and products around particular tokens. Is that something that you're thinking about? And do you see like specific use cases with like the ASICs world where this lines up?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is such an important point, and I think what comes back to when I think about this specific feature, and what a lot of benefit can be built into NFTs is with this sort of idea of loyalty. And so this conditional commit idea is like, for whatever reason, you have this asset, whether you are at a particular place in time and you earned it as a POAP, or you bought it, right? And holding that asset over time is really an emblem or a symbol of your loyalty to a particular project or a particular brand. And that loyalty can be rewarded in more tangible ways than, an email list or something that you just amass, and you just send, happy birthday emails or something random every once in a while. Loyalty can be something that is more tangible, that has more value. And I think, there are obvious ways that this can be applied where, for example, you get access to a particular exclusive product, or get early access to that product. And for us, if we're releasing a new shoe, that's exciting, and we'll expect to sell out. Maybe there's like a reserve of that shoe that is held back for this audience that's holding this NFT. But I think honestly, more importantly on this topic, it's like, there's this, I think with utility specifically, a lot of times it's sort of this, it becomes very transactional where, the utility is always in the form of, what do I get for owning this thing? Like, what other thing do I get because I hold this asset? And I actually think what something we're trying to figure out and something we're trying to build is there value in holding the thing and not selling it and not getting anything and creating memories with that asset? And so I think there's something more to be figured out here, where what is the value that you can feel as a person holding an NFT that just feels good because you own it and it's yours, and maybe you use it to do certain things and it doesn't have any sort of transactional value, but it makes you feel something. Just like when I throw away a pair of running shoes, it's a sad day because I ran for the past 6 months to a year with those shoes, and now they're kind of like part of me. I love them, and but I have a hard time because they're typically like busted and falling apart when I throw them away. But I think if we can create NFTs that you really feel personal attachment to, it's not necessarily about what I can get because I own it. It's because I love this thing that I own. So anyway, yeah, maybe some interesting ideas there. Hopefully, something we can spin off of.
Yeah, I think, Fred, like using NFTs is more of like emotional attachment. And we've seen this in the past, right? Like NFTs almost as like identity systems. For instance, every time we do something in Decentraland, people go wild for these proof of attendance tokens, right? So they're gone in minutes. Right, as one example of this, you have something that doesn't have like transactional value, but it's more like a show-off case or something where you can prove in the end you took part in this event, right? This bit older idea. I'm interested on this, right, with these unique experiences and kind of attaching more value to real-world interactions. Chris, you're talking to a lot of brands. How receptive do you find them to be around these ideas of, for instance, something like a conditional commit, gamified experiences using NFTs? Are these things they're interested about, and how critical, as we talked about this previously, right? As Joe, for instance, said, right? Like there are really different perceptions in the space around NFTs. What is kind of their current view on it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one size fits all, right? When you speak to different clients, there's some that are really wanting to go head first, all in on this space. You've got others that you have to explain the benefit. And we know, like in this world I'm in with clients and trying to build their advertising and media strategies, there's so many limitations now around having more kind of peer-to-peer, one-to-one relationships with your customers. Like there's so many blockers to doing that. And this emergence of this Web3 space with NFTs and tokenization really allows for those relationships and those experiences to come to life. So for us, I think it's definitely a case of trying to explain it in the most kind of layman's terms to marketing people. But again, there's obviously quite a lot of people already in this space that are interested and have personal interest in what's happening. I think from like away from the utility as well, when we think about these virtual experiences in these worlds that we're building for clients, it's really again understanding the purpose and the aesthetic of what the client wants. Because again, we've seen like even just from Decentraland, right? Like a lot of people compare it to like mid kind of 2000s in terms of it being like Second Life, right? Like naturally, a lot of people kind of default to that in their heads, but they don't necessarily understand that you can manipulate and change that aesthetic based on every experience that's happening in that world and beyond. So I think for us, again, it's really trying to figure out exactly how they're not just like what the experience should be and what it should unlock for the customer or their audience, but also what's the aesthetic that they're trying to build in these worlds as well. We're seeing like brands like Gucci do that really well, right? They're building out their space. They've got that aesthetic with the Gucci Vault, and they know that's kind of what they're leaning into, and then they're starting that storytelling piece as well of like Wagmi-san and people like that in this space. I think them, Adidas, those kind of brands are really kind of like laying down the blueprint for how this space should be. It shouldn't just be a persistent experience with not much kind of like build on what it should be, but they're actually kind of building out that storytelling angle. And one of our clients, actually, Heineken over at Dentsu, they've just launched their kind of space in Decentraland. And again, it's kind of figuring out like how is a beer brand, like a physical product that is enjoyed in the real life can come to life in these virtual worlds. And they're having fun with that, right? Like they're building out their different narratives, figuring out like what's the beer of the metaverse. Like there's a really interesting time for brands, and it's an exciting time to start recreating a story for those younger generations beyond just a physical, tangible product you put in your hand. It's very much about like building out these new storytelling experiences for your customers.
Especially kind of drinking beer in the metaverse.
brewing beer in the metaverse as well is an interesting one. There's a lot of virtual ingredients that go into that. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially in this space, how we saw this almost like out of nowhere, these events like Nike acquiring Artifact, right? Like really realizing this value there. And I think it's also, besides kind of these unique experiences, right, that are built, we're seeing kind of redefines the relationships customers have to brands, right? And Nicole, on that front, I would be interested about is you have this community first approach, and now you're dipping your toes into physicals, right? Like, how do you think about that? Is that almost like now you're also becoming similar to a traditional brand, or
Yeah.
that caters to a community, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that my priority would still be my community. So, I think that if we were to become a global brand, we will need to create a presence not only in the Web3 space, but also in the real world, in the Web2 space as well. So this is why for Asian, we will be incorporating ourselves as like a legal entity, and moving forward, we will actually be operating like a company, right? So I do have huge dreams for Asian, and at the same time, we were talking about real life utilities and stuff like that. And this is why even for our partnerships on Decentraland and I mean on with Boson on Decentraland, we are partnering with 4 Malaysian brands. So they are all brands that are not into the NFT space, and even getting them on board, it was really tricky. It's not easy. So 3 of them are actually clothing brands. So they have established themselves in Asia. They're at least more than 10 years experience in the space. And then one of them, it's Royal Selangor. So they are the largest pewter brand in the world. They have been around for, I think, a long time. I think it was close to about 150 years or something. So getting them on board was a challenge, but I'm actually so happy that they agreed to do this with us. So moving forward, we will actually be creating a presence in the real world and also in Asia, because as you know, in Asia, crypto and NFTs are not as mainstream as they are in the West. Like if you look at the brands in the West, like they are all like full on NFTs, full on crypto. But then if you look at like in Asia, typically brands, even like really established ones, they are more reserved. They are not so into the space. So this is why I have a short-term goal is to get them on board. Like this space is growing, and I feel that sooner or later we will all need to hop on into the space as well. So in terms of like benefits of what our members can get, we have actually plans to have sort of like special discounts and even like merch. And at the same time, I feel that there is actually so many things that we could do, right? For instance, let's say the pewter that we are selling in the booth. So you will actually get a physical pewter, and the pewter is actually featuring one of our rarest NFTs, which is the goddess Jade Lady, Asian lady. So these NFTs actually owned by Matt Higgins from Shark Tank. So I'm a huge fan, and it was such an honor to be able to like collaborate with Matt Higgins and Royal Selangor and Asians to create this piece. So in the future, in the future, we can even explore like IP rights, where we can, use the Asian NFT to put it onto like merch or to clothing, and then, sell it. And then the owners of the NFT, they can still get a cut from just owning the piece, right? So, the team and I are like we will always brainstorm things of what we can become. So this is why this collaboration with Boson is something that I'm so excited about, because I feel that like before that, even speaking about the idea of going onto like the metaverse to buy something and getting something shipped to you, they would be like, oh, is this even possible? Like, how is it going to be done? Wouldn't it be, not feasible and everything else? And you know what, like we have a concept here, and it works. So I feel that in the future, brands might not even have like a web store anymore. They can just buy a plot of land on a metaverse, and you don't even need to have a physical store, right? You can save your rent, you can save your utilities, you don't even need to hire a cashier, right? You can just do everything online. And with this whole metaverse, you can create a next like experience for not only the users but for the sellers as well. So yeah, this whole thing is just really, really exciting to me.
Yeah, I think building experiences in the metaverse that bridge this is really what we found to get a whole lot of traction, right? And I think, Chris, you previously touched upon COVID, right? And it accelerating this whole trend of essentially doing things online natively, right? Like shopping online exclusively, building these online communities. And we talked about kind of using this whole space for storytelling. How do you think about, Chris, how do you think about brands kind of being able to tell more elaborate stories? And where do you see the relationship of kind of virtual spaces and kind of virtual assets, digital assets like NFTs, and this bridge between kind of then real world brick and mortar stores coming in?
Yeah, great question. So I think like there's obviously so much noise around PFP projects. There's seems every day to be a new one kind of gaining momentum and seeing a lot of heat around it. But I think we haven't really seen like a brand create their own kind of identity through IP yet. We've obviously seen a lot of brands piggybacking on some of the more popular projects like Bored Ape and G Money. But I think for me, there's the opportunity there for brands to really kind of own new IP and create that storytelling angle through that. But kind of on the other side of that coin, I also think utilizing like XR, when we think about augmented and virtual reality as well, like we're starting to see user cases and examples of where stores can be brought to life. I did mention at the beginning, there's obviously the Nike example with their NYC store. But I think being able to bring your experience that you're creating in the metaverse and Web3, whether it be a PFP project or a story or an initiative, into that physical space is super interesting. And I think sometimes it's hard to kind of conceptualize that to an older audience or a person that's not necessarily fully in this space, because they don't quite understand that these stories have kind of a lot of gravitas to them and people really want to understand where the story goes, right? I think Jenkins, the Bored Ape, is a really good example of that. Like the studio behind that, they're kind of building out that story into not just storytelling through like Twitter, but creating physical books, right, where they want that story to be told and that kind of thing. What happens when a brand creates that type of IP or works for that kind of IP and brings that experience into the store, right? It could be a guided virtual experience through the store, like trying to kind of get that IP to tell you about background to the product or what's being created. I think that will be something where we see like virtual assistants, like we see it in the movies, but that will be something that these PFP projects could evolve into. And for the next generation, as I mentioned, like that's incredibly like organic and just what they're going to expect, right? They're going to expect the characters and the IP that they see in this gamified like world, in this metaverse world, come to life in that physical space. There shouldn't be any kind of blockers to that. Like technology is allowing now for us to kind of have those experiences both physically and digitally and vice versa. So yeah, I think it's going to be incredible how retail kind of evolves and develops. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how brands kind of work in this space with building their own stories and IP.
And I think on that, it's getting really clear in this discussion, right? Like that we see this way forward towards these virtual experiences using digitally native assets to drive this forward, right? Like NFTs with superpowers. But there always seems to be this trade-off with something like this, where if you're too early, right, you might be the one that takes the fall, right, and gets backlash. And we've seen this, right, with things that seem unnatural in this space. But if you're too late, then you're missing the boat, right? Joe, specific to you and at ASICS, with this really clear kind of vision that you drive forward around exercising, health, and kind of how do you think about this trade-off, introducing something new to your customer, your community, and weighing the risks and benefits of kind of joining this space?
Yeah, totally. It's a great question, and I feel like we are, I don't know, we were a little bit insulated, because even if we were to offer something that is maybe something that doesn't click or doesn't stick with the audience, at the end of the day, where we're coming from and our intention is that this is coming from a place where we wanted to motivate people to be healthy at the end of the day. And if, whatever we put out there doesn't necessarily hit the mark, that's fine, right? We're not promising somebody that they're gonna 10x their, whatever they buy the NFT at, right? Like that's just not. There are so many projects that are offering such great returns on whatever the NFT is. Like in our case, it's like they're the experts at that, and for us, we want to be the experts at motivating you to treat yourself well at the end of the day. So yeah, I guess from my perspective, the strategy starting from that point, it becomes like, okay, now how do we achieve that goal? We're going to try a bunch of things, and some of them hopefully will stick. And if they don't, hopefully we can learn a lot from them. And that's the fun part to me, is like solving that problem, right? How do we motivate this younger audience? To Chris's point earlier, I think he was spot on. Like maybe an older generation doesn't need that same type of motivation or gamification that a younger audience might be, or a Web3 or a digital native audience might. And so for us, it's trying to figure out how we use this technology, this exciting, fun technology that has so many benefits and so many different use cases to achieve that goal. So maybe what we offer as digital assets become valuable someday, but from a financial standpoint, but hopefully we can build something that's valuable beyond that. Something that's not necessarily, built to make money. It's more built to make you feel good.
I think you're touching on like an interesting point there, which is right, like digital assets purely as an investment class, right? And the perception there that you as a brand don't want to introduce that you're all of a sudden selling a digital asset as an investment, right? And I'm curious, Nicole, you as kind of an NFT project, where members and owners of this NFT, right, like have this exposure to the asset itself. What are kind of this, because I know, right, like this also makes strong aligned incentives, right? All of a sudden you have this group of people that own a common asset that they're looking to appreciate, right? What have you seen in your experience of like being in this NFT space for like a bit over a year?
Yeah.
What have you seen, how this plays out? What are kind of the positive and negative sides of this?
Yeah, so I would say that initially everyone is here to make money. Like they're just here to make money, and they're just here to make that 10x, to make that 100x. And I would say a lot of people that has that kind of mentality, they will tend to, get disappointed, because maybe back then when NFTs are so new and so rare, it's like a rare Pokemon, right? Anything that are NFTs would actually go to the moon, because the space was so new and everybody was just FOMOing, and they were just, as long as it's an NFT, even if it's an invisible rock, they would buy it, right? But I would say that the space has actually moved so fast, and you see that there's so many industry leaders, like even among yourself, they actually jump in. And I would say that people are not here to make money anymore. They're actually here for the utility. They're actually here for the right reasons, and they're here, to see that how NFTs can actually shape the future and to kind of make everyone's life easier. So I would say that even with this drop, right? There's a few members that DM'd me and be like, okay, if I buy this NFT on Boson, what is the return rate? Would I get like 2x? And I'm like, this is just a product, it's just a product. If you want to trade, you can buy something else, can buy another NFT. I told them, I said, this is it. Like you buy it, you get the user experience, you get a physical one sent to your house, and it's so amazing. It has never been done before. So I would say that in this space, because it's so new and everybody's here, okay, just to make money, I think it's a learning curve to kind of tell them that, okay, this is not just about flipping, it's not just about, making fast money, and there's so many utilities that NFTs can actually bring, right? So yeah, I would say that we are actually in the right path. There is actually so many people that are here for the utilities, right? So even, for instance, like we actually have this idea about NFTs, because right now it's just a 2D PFP. We actually made a 3D remodeled version of her, so she's a full on model where she can actually walk, dance, and then we even plan to give her a voice, kind of like an AI, right? And it's so cool because the other day I was actually inspired by Louis Vuitton. Actually, Louis Vuitton actually had a Final Fantasy character where she dressed up as like full on Louis Vuitton with like bags and clothing. And I had this idea where if we can actually have our Asian model, dressed up like that, right? So we actually put on sunglasses and really cute clothing, like really fashionable clothing, and she looks so cute, right? So moving forward, I would say that even NFTs can actually create like AI models, like really famous AI models, right? Just like how we have Sophia the robot. Everybody knows who's Sophia the robot, right? She's a famous character. So yeah, I would say that this space is so exciting, and I just can't wait to have more and more established companies, established leaders coming in and shape the space, right? I feel that this year and next year, it's going to be really amazing. And who knows, we can even have ASIC as our model. We can wear her shoes. She can go running. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting.
Love it. Cool idea.
Yeah.
We would love to see that. Yeah. Maybe an open question to the forum, right? Nicole, you're touching on like utilities, right? And as we're moving from a highly speculative space that is kind of driven by kind of this more, right, like focus on a digital asset class that can appreciate, moving towards a space where it's all about building utility around these things. An open question here: what is something you see that you're most excited about that could introduce kind of NFTs with utilities in the future? So we talked about IP rights, right? Like redeemable NFTs, like we're doing at Boson. Is there anything specific you have in mind that you think is really a big one for the future?
I can take that one first. I think for me, I love the like we speak about the constituent parts of Web3, right? And we think NFTs and we think metaverse, and a lot of people kind of separate those two things in their minds. But if you think about like an NFT project, and we've spoken about how things can be airdropped into wallets and that kind of thing. Like if you hold an NFT of a particular project, there's nothing stopping from like the kind of the founder of that project then continuing to airdrop spaces and different things into that wallet and building out those virtual experiences exclusively for the owner or the holder of that PFP, say in this instance. So you're not just creating them a character and giving them a voice or a narrative in that space, but you're building out the actual space in which they can inhabit. And I know we've seen a couple of this, obviously most famously with the CloneX project from the Artifact guys, like they started out with the loot pods and the space pods. But I think that's really kind of an incredible one in terms of thinking about how these PFP projects can come to life and actually start airdropping the metaverse into people's wallets. And they start to then build out their own, not just galleries, but these virtual spaces that can come to life through VR, that can become showrooms for like all of their assets. That kind of like, there's so much utility in being able to create space for people that actually hold these NFTs. That for me is a super interesting space. And then you think about building the connections and the bridge between those different spaces and worlds. It's like The Sims for Web3, but in a world in which we can actually kind of house all of our assets and that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's awesome, and I think the airdrop idea is just so powerful, especially when with that surprise element. Like you don't necessarily need to know it's coming, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what is this thing that I am seeing in my wallet now? This is pretty cool. Yeah, and I think building on that, I think this isn't necessarily the on topic, but I one thing I am excited about is seeing NFTs that are discoverable in the physical world. I think especially ones that you don't necessarily have to buy, and ones that you can actually find, in your neighborhood, similar to like a kind of like a Pokemon Go style idea where, you can stumble upon these assets and then own them and not necessarily have to pay for them. And then you kind of enter into this, again, to build on Chris's point, you enter into this opportunity to be able to be part of a community and part of an ongoing future of a project. And I think that outdoor discoverability AR piece is where I hope to see things go. I hope to see people out in the world discovering cool things that you would never be able to discover in the physical world, but are there because of this cool new digital technology that we have. And the limitless potential of what those assets can be in when you think about 3D and just art and creative thinking, like anything can exist. And as long as you keep it safe and don't have people walking out into the middle of the street getting hit by cars, like if you can avoid that and you can have a safe environment where people can discover fun things in the real world, like archaeologists and hunters and gatherers, I think that's, it's pretty cool evolution of the space. And I think can be a really great onboarding experience for general populations who aren't necessarily native to the space. It's a little bit more, maybe a little bit more approachable and a little bit more fun, interactive, and gamified to some of the earlier questions we were talking about.
Yeah, so I do agree with Chris and Joe. To me, there is so many endless possibilities that we can use. Is just up to our ideas and our creativity in the space. But I would like to see my NFTs to act as like a membership, like exclusive membership, not just for you to go on to the Decentraland and then having like token gated and stuff like that, those really cool stuff, but also in the real world where you can just show your NFTs and you could get like one free shirt, or you could get like discounts, you can get free meals in the mall, right? Or like just anything. I feel like the possibilities are endless. And moving forward, we are partnering with a lot of retail brands that would be keen to jump on the space to offer discounts or some sort of benefits to our members, because we only have 8,000 holders. So we want to make them like kind of feel exclusive, right? And having all these real life utilities. So yeah, also like with airdrops as well, I feel that this airdropping tool, having their wallet address in our database, I feel that this is so useful. It's just like how this morning we actually airdropped, yesterday we actually airdropped this really cute hoodie that we made to our members, and everybody's gonna wear it. And later on, when we have the fashion show in 3 hours, we will all wear it and we'll all jump in and we will all take like a group selfie. So that is really exciting. I'm looking forward to do that with our community. So it's just things like that, right? That we can do. So I really love this airdropping tool. So this space is just so amazing. Like every day I wake up, I just love going to work, because I was like, okay, what can we do today? And so yeah.
Yeah, I think retroactive rewards are really a cool model, right? And we've seen this play out in DeFi, where it's people don't expect, right? Like people don't know what's going to happen, but when it happens, it really drives the excitement. So we have 10 minutes left, and to our audience, feel free to drop questions in the chat if you have any. We're talking about NFTs with superpowers, but I would still like to go on like a slight tangent, because I think like the combination of having Nicole from Asian here, Joe from A6, Chris from Dentsu, would just like to ask again to all of you, kind of this, as we see the space merging, right? Like Nike buying up artifacts, these collaborations we see in this space between NFT projects, traditional brands. What are the things that NFT projects can learn from brands, and the other way around? What can brands learn from NFT projects, and especially kind of the wild mechanics that have been introduced there?
I think it's more brands learning from NFT projects, in my opinion, right? Like the reason I love this space, and there's many reasons why I love this space. One of the main reasons is like just seeing the collaboration with people kind of coming together in their different spaces and communities online. I think like when we look back on this space in 20 years, similar to how we look at the origins of Web 2 and kind of dial-up internet, like it took communities and people to collaborate and come together to build that space. And I think we can really kind of pinpoint accurately where some of those things have kind of really emerged. Like Discord's obviously a great space, but we're seeing all of these different spaces emerge where people are just coming together, and like they don't have to be geographically in the same location anymore. It's such a nice like way of kind of seeing like people coming from all over the world to come together to build these projects, to build out this space. I think for me, that's the most interesting thing that's come out of this. The connections I've made with people outside of my kind of geographical space, as I mentioned, has been incredible over the last like 2.5 years. And I think for me, that's really like the most exciting thing that has happened. And I'm just really excited to see again, like as we develop in this space, what happens with like a DAO, right? Like how does a DAO develop to kind of become really well established? And then how can organizations that are kind of rooted in like the older way of doing things, how can they learn from that community building? How can they learn from the business operations of these DAOs? I think for me, that's a super interesting space. And yeah, it's definitely brands learning as they go with how these communities are working in this metaverse and Web3 world.
Yeah, I feel like we're starting to get into a rhythm where Chris goes first, I go second, and then Mom goes third. But no, I think, one thing I can say from, being part of a larger global brand is, we learn every day from NFT projects like HN, and as Mom was saying earlier, we, look at the community building aspect of these NFT projects as incredibly impressive and also incredibly smart. I think this community first mentality that NFT projects tend to bring, or at least the more successful ones tend to bring and create, is inspiring. And I think to be able to bring a group of people together around an idea before a product or an offering even exists is just great. Just great startup methodology. It's like a great way to start a business, because you're building people around this idea first, validating your concept, and then saying, hey, here's the thing we promised you, right? And I think it's a really smart way to release new and innovative products, and something that is also, when we think about new products and bringing things to market, there's a lot of risk, because we don't want to release something that gets rejected, and we don't want to put in the resources into something that maybe could go towards something else. So there's this I guess we can get stuck oftentimes just creating the same old thing. But with community first mentality, you can actually start to learn from people and get ideas, and maybe end up creating something that you never intended to create. So I think the opportunity for innovation through just community building first before you create products is something that I've personally learned a lot from projects like HN. And I think that's a very specific case for us.
Yeah, so I would say there's a lot of things for me to learn, because when I start off this NFT project, I think just the same as everyone else, we actually started off as like a group assignment, you call it, so we just three friends just gathered, sit on a, went on a Zoom call and be like, okay, how are we going to get this done? So I would say that right now, after we have sold out, and to get to where we are today, there's a lot of things that I'm trying to pick up, in terms of even setting up a company structure, and then making sure that I have all the trademarks and all the licensings filed, having like a bank account to do all the expenses, all these little small things that people will be like, oh, that's common sense. But, most of the time, even when I speak to other project founders, I'm like, oh, did you trademark your name? And they'll be like, do we need that? But I would say, like, if you talk to someone in the Web2 space, they'll be like, yeah, this is common sense. This is something that you need to do. So because right now we are trying to create a global presence, and even when we reach out to brands from like in the real world, like last time, how I did was I would just reach out to them, and then most of the time they'll be like, oh, what's your company's name? or like, you need to fill in this form. And, I realized that half of the form I can't be filled because I don't have the information. So that kind of struck me. And I told my team, I was like, you know what, we can't proceed, or we can't even talk to any of the brands, without even having a company. So I had to kind of like go back and, get all these things laid out and sorted. So yeah, there is still things for me to learn. I would say that, this is why the Web 2 and the Web 3 space, we will need to find like a balance, right? Like the perfect balance to, to make a project successful in this space. So, having all the basic things laid out is also really important, at the same time to learn how to connect to the communities and how to kind of create a presence in the Web3 space is also really important for a project to succeed.
Totally agree. We're almost running out of time. Do you guys have anything that you wanna add before we end the panel?
No, I think the last thing I'll say is I find just like I have limitless energy for this space. Like I love where we are right now, and I mentioned this briefly earlier. I think we are in this authoring stage where we're the people who are lucky enough to get to define what this thing is, and the building blocks that we're building right now will be what the future of this space is built on top of. And so I think taking that very seriously and being thoughtful about that is incredibly important. And I don't take it lightly. I know from my perspective, we want to be very, very thoughtful with everything we do. And there is this need, frankly, to move quickly. And that needs to be balanced with being thoughtful and being thinking about the long term of the space, both from your own perspective, being able to manage expectations down the line and being able to continue to deliver on your promises, but then also like making it so this thing doesn't turn into something we don't want it to turn into. So I just think being thoughtful and being conscious and being appreciative of the opportunity to create this thing is what gets me excited every day working on it.
Seconded. Love that.
Yeah, I think that's a great closing statement. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Nicole, for this great panel. We started off with NFTs with Superpower, and we got more into kind of the utility and where the space is going. What's particularly exciting about marrying kind of these worlds of physical and virtual. So for everybody watching, now we have our fireside chat with Tommy Hilfiger coming up in a minute. That was NFTs with Superpowers. Thanks, everyone.